guys, Sports Rec Nation back here with you for another podcast. Today we're going to be talking about recreation and specifically some topics like forest schools and outdoor education. So I will be kind of leading things today. My name is Megan, and here with me I have
Evan,
Sarah Lynn,
Javier,
Cynthia.
via phone. So hopefully you guys can hear Cynthia okay.
Well, Cynthia's really good at making herself heard.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So yeah, talk as much as you want, Cynthia.
Say some nasty things right now.
how's Newfoundland?
I am.
I said, how is Newfoundland?
Oh, it's good.
Okay, back to the podcast. We can talk about this later. So we took a class in the fall. It's called Foundations of Sport and Recreation. So basically in that class we kind of defined recreation to ourselves, and some of the words that we used were organization, no responsibilities, unstructured, and fun. So I just wanted to know if you guys had any changes to or words to add to that list based on like finishing the course and where we kind of are today with our previous podcasts and other knowledge that we've learned this year.
for recreation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I forget what I said last year. I might have said like unstructured or fun or something
Yeah,
like that.
those are two. Yeah.
I feel like now recreation can also be structured, but obviously not in a competitive sense, I guess.
At this point, recreation it's heading towards that's like Sarah Lynn says, a structure, like a set of rules. So you can potentialize or improve how recreation is handled and the benefits of recreation. So yeah, I will agree with Sarah Lynn that rules and a framework is starting to be implemented in recreation.
Okay, so we're kind of moving away from the unstructured to structured and rules.
Yeah, I think that the idea of recreation has kind of changed. Like say 30 years ago, recreation was more considered, what we now define as leisure, and I think that it's now kind of come into play where you're talking about being competitive and non-competitive and non-structured. I think it keeps changing now. Like now we're seeing maybe a different kind of way that people are seeing or understanding recreation.
I don't really have much to add to that. Everybody pretty defined it really well. I think like Javier and Sarah had mentioned, you're starting to see more of a focus on structuring recreation, more outdoor activities. I know around here there was a bunch of opportunities to partake in outdoor recreation classes, building like snowboards, cooking outside, snowshoeing. Snowshoeing seems to be really popular around here now.
Because there's so much snow this year.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like, I feel like my understanding has expanded to include structured recreation because I've learned more about it. But I feel like recreation is sort of an umbrella where underneath it there's structured and unstructured, because I hate to think that we're getting away from the idea of unstructured as well, because I think having unstructured play or recreation is important also because maybe mostly, well, for everyone, but mostly for kids who are developing, like it's important for them to be able to like think for themselves and then make their own decisions and not have someone all the time telling them what to do, because if someone's always telling them what to do, that's gonna it's not gonna help them develop as much as a person into an adult.
Right. So this idea with forest schools, if anyone's not familiar, I'll just read kind of a definition that I came up with. So forest schools are a form of outdoor education used to teach children about nature and allows them to explore and become familiar with their surroundings. Basically, it has the kids doing anything and everything in the span of a day, from climbing trees and exploring on their own to cutting veggies and cooking their own food. So it's fairly new to us anyways, and New Brunswick. New Brunswick's first forest school opened their invisible doors, is what they say, in September of 2013. So this form of recreation is essentially not what you guys have been saying, like it's not structured. The kids are free to do whatever they please or whatever they are capable of. So what do you guys think about forest schools and their benefits?
Even if they are allowed to do whatever they want, they're encouraged to do things they're afraid of. I was reading this article in which kids were actually digging for bugs, for example, and that kid especially was frightened by bugs and insects, right?
Yeah.
So there's encouraged to actually face their fears, which is an interesting concept thinking about kids, right? So
yeah, they don't get that anywhere else. It doesn't, like, they're not going to be forced to dig for bugs in another situation.
You cannot dig for bugs in pavement or in cement, in floor, right? So yeah.
I think like one of the things that I find fascinating about the forest schools to me is that it's something that's like it has to be structured now. Like actually going out and partaking in nature has to be structured now. Like I find it weird from when I was a kid. Like that was just the thing. It wasn't like a structured activity that you had to partake in. You went out and you played the woods, and you would go out and play, and then you come back at the end of the day. But I find it fascinating now that I think the forest schools is a great idea, and it's something that, like, for me, like, I would enroll my kid in if I ever have kids. But that's another story we can talk about later. For me, the forest schools is a great way to get kids outside, but to me, I find it weird that you have to put structure to it now. Like I don't know if that's.
I know what you mean. Like this forest school is created to make this opportunity for the kids, whereas like when we were kids, it was just there.
Yeah.
We didn't need any help to go outside and to experience these things. It was, I know what you mean.
Good
yeah,
point.
I think people are like missing out on that imagination kind of aspect of it. Like, I mean, I remember when I was a kid and we would go outside and, you play imaginary games or whatever, and it's different. You go off into your own little world and you create something. Now, and like Evan just said, it's structure. You have to, like, when you're outside, well, we're going to learn how to build a fire. We're going to learn how to do this. We're going to learn how to do that. Why can't they just go off and do something and maybe learn from it? Like it just, again, I mean, it's exactly what Evan said. I think it's great that they're creating this, but one of the fundamental aspects that is why people want to go to these forest schools or, are really advocating outside play and stuff is to get back into that imagination because it creates that creativity and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but in this moment, this framework or structure or rules or whatever that this school means is important. In one of the articles that we discussed or we read before coming here, it was a term that our society is living in a nature deficit disorder. Actually, they're least inclined to go to nature and enjoy nature, and it has a lot to do with other options that they have. Technology is great and super attractive. It's very more comfortable. So right now, you kind of need this kind of framework to force. I don't want to say force. I want to say encourage. To encourage kids to go outside. Because if you leave it to them, to either stay in your bed using whatever console, video game, whatever you would like to do, or go outside and into the snow, into the rain, get dressed, and I don't know, some kids are kind of fragile, so they don't like to scat their knees or whatever. So that happens. That happens. They're kids. That happens. So this structure in this scenario to actually try to deal with this nature disorder thing, deficit disorder, I support it. I support it. If that's what it takes to get the kids outside, let's do it.
It's kind of sad that this is what it takes to get the kids outside.
I agree with you.
It's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's still fun. I mean, I think that as a kid, I grew up playing outside, and it was lots of fun, but I also think it would have been fun. I still would have participated in that forestry school because, I mean, you get kids together and you're doing different activities that you wouldn't normally do. And I remember when we were in colloquium and we watched videos of that, and there was really young kids
Yeah, the
like
typical
cut
age
in
is like 3 to 5.
cut in
because it's
vegetables,
preschool, really.
and everyone was like, "Oh my god," and I was like that. I was like, "Oh my god, that's so nerve wracking."
How
But
dare you let that
but at
kid-
the same time, like I thought it was. I don't know. After I thought of it, I was like, well, that's probably a good idea because it's letting them learn skills that they're going to need later in life anyway. So why not learn it earlier on and know how to be safe with it, so that hopefully accidents don't happen. But I don't know.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think like the way that society views those things is that a little kid can't be cutting vegetables with a knife, and what were some of the other things, like they were climbing trees was the one.
They're allowed
And they have like
wander
a
off by
little
themselves
tightrope
and-
thing
Yeah.
that they were practicing on.
Yeah.
Like that's something that when we were kids, like that wasn't an issue, but now it's a thing. Like parents are afraid to let their kids go out and even play in their neighborhood, let alone
Mm-hmm.
In the woods.
right? And you see in society today that parents and guardians are more protective of kids, and not to say anything against my parents, but that's the way society is now. It's that
It's like a bubble.
yeah.
I
It's
hate
kind
the
of
idea
thing.
of like our society has completely, I don't know, we have like nothing but bubble kids now.
Yeah.
And I'm not a parent, so I'm like, oh, this is horrible, and kids should be able to do things. But
Yeah.
when I'm at home, and like my godchild, he's, I don't know, 8 now, but in the past few years, I'd be like, oh my god, be careful. Oh my god. I would totally catch myself doing it, and I'm like, okay, stop. He needs to learn how to fall. He needs to be able to like do these different things and learn on his own. I don't know, it's hard. But I totally hate the idea of bubble kids, but I mean, I can catch myself getting caught up into it, and so I can't imagine having my own child, my own flesh and blood, and like, don't
Letting
do
them
this,
go.
don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the, I read an article today, and I didn't send it to you guys because I didn't want to bombard you with something right before the podcast, but it was about risk and how parents in general are less inclined to let their kids kind of go because they're afraid that they don't know what will happen. And there was a quote in there that the author said that a school principal friend of hers told her that they want them to take safety in the schoolyard they take on safety in the schoolyard so that kids don't break an arm, but you want them to scrape a knee. So then they will learn like what kind of situations they're allowed to, or they should go into, and what kind of risks are involved with certain things. And part of the video I think that we saw, I rewatched it, was talking about how risk was involved in the forest schools because kids would recognize like if a tree was too slippery or if it was too high, then they shouldn't do that. So it's definitely something that they could learn at the forest school.
That's kind of the idea that I was getting at, though, is that kids need to learn how to fall and get back up. Like, I'm not saying fall off a 20-foot tree, but I mean, they have to be able to learn through trial and error on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the what's the word I'm looking for? One of the advantages of forest school, or at least what they keep saying that there is that they can actually deal with problems and find they help with the problem solving, and they can assess risk and they can actually find solutions to issues. So that's what's supposed to help forest school. I don't know if there's stats supporting that though, but I cannot see how it would happen, right?
Yeah.
Because like you're not facing a 2-street scenario. You're facing a 100-street scenario every time you go to the forest, right? So I can see how it works. Like I can see how actually encourage the kid to actually develop that part of your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it forces them to step outside of their comfort zone. So anytime you do that, you learn things whether you want to or not. And maybe it's the parents who kind of force them to go to the forest school, but they're the ones who are involved and immersed in it and enjoying their time, even if they didn't think that they would in the beginning.
I'm kind of interested, I mean, in the papers and in the videos on forestry schools, it shows the kids and how they interact, but I'm kind of interested to see how the parents would react to seeing their kids and what they're actually doing there. Because I mean, essentially,
they drop them off.
as far as I know, they kind of take them there, drop them off. They're there for a few hours, or pick them up. So I wonder, like, what their reactions would be to see the things that they're doing. I mean, I'm not saying they're doing anything bad. It's just in today's society,
Like
everything's like,
would they let them do that at home?
really, everything's overly cautious, maybe.
Yeah. So one of the articles that I had you guys read was relating to the benefits of mud. I'm not sure if you actually read this one. So it said, or according to this article, mud has microscopic bacteria that soothes you, relaxes you, and calms you. Do you guys believe in that?
Well, there's a spas that use mud as like a treatment for
I was going to say
relaxing.
that.
So
Spa.
should we all go jump in the mud out here while
The
we're
mud
waiting?
That's why I was like, all the spas use it. They
Oh, okay.
have like
Spa.
mud, yeah. like
You're kidding.
mud mask.
Those mud pies. Like, that was so much fun.
Well,
Ridiculous.
the article talked about how kids, they had this like pile of dirt that they made mud, and the kids literally just jumped in and jumped around on it, and then like this guy who wrote it was just watching and couldn't believe that they were like letting them do this and whatever. But then he kind of went further into it and found that it had
I think the biggest
qualities.
problem
Sorry, lost my
is that, kids aren't allowed to be kids anymore. And playing with mud helps them do that. Like, they can just play. They can just do whatever they want. And again, like, there's no restrictions. If you're going to play with mud, you're going to play with mud. You're going to figure out what it is, all that stuff. But, like, nowadays, I mean, how many times do you see, like, 10-year-old girls wearing makeup and dressing inappropriately? Or even guys, same thing, and having cell phones when they're 6 years old. My niece wants this iPad or cell phone so she can text her friends. She's 5. Like, they're not
Can she
allowed.
spell?
Like,
But they need
I
it for
couldn't believe it.
emergency
I was like, are you
situations.
kidding me
Oh my
right now?
goodness.
She asked my mother for that for her birthday. And I was like, okay, A, I didn't get that for my birthday. B, that's not okay.
Do I hang?
And
Just to be fair, for your 5th birthday, were cell phones a thing?
No.
no.
I mean, okay.
Still, no. I mean, you got a play phone.
For my
Yeah.
birthday, I wanted to have a Pokemon party, basically. Okay? Like, I mean, I get that it's a different age,
Yeah,
but kids are, like, they're maturing at such a young age. They shouldn't have to.
They're
They
almost-
should be allowed to be kids for
Yeah.
more time than,
they're like losing
what we
that aspect
give
of
them.
They're like skipping that whole development.
But
like,
to be
kid
fair,
thing.
the ones in the more rush to not be kids are them. So, like, it's our job to make them understand they need to be kids. So if we have to encourage them through a forest school to do it, this whatever it works.
I don't disagree with the forest schools. I don't. I just think that there's more to it than having kids outdoors. That's my feelings.
Okay, yeah, of course, I agree with you. Like, one of the advantages of forest schools, or at least allegedly, is that they help with the social skills. They help shy kids come out of their shell. I'm gonna guess that expression.
Good job. That was good.
Awesome. I know English, yes. Okay, so that helps, right? And that's helped the development of the kid. And now it's not just about being outdoorsy or not. It's about being a more complete human being,
About
So,
social interaction.
yeah.
But I guess one of my questions is that, and this is just not, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just asking, what happens when these kids have to enter the real world?
What do you mean?
Now they're not in a forest area anymore. Now they're sitting in a classroom all day.
Yeah, but
Now
they have all these skills and they know how to interact. I think, like, that's good.
Yeah, and in all fairness, according to one of the articles that actually was peer-reviewed, they had a difficult transition time, but once they got settled, they outperformed the other students in motor skills, in observation, in concentration, in focus, in that kind of areas. So I agree with you. Like now the question is how to deal with that difficult transition time. But at the end, it helped.
That part helped, but how were their grades? Like I think the 4 schools are great, but if everybody's not going to do it, then how are you gonna? It's a big component that I'm not sure it's gonna work.
So you're suggesting a standardized education system in which everyone does exactly the same thing?
No,
I'm just trying to understand.
society is suggesting. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm telling you here and now, with
Okay.
kids growing up, this is what it is. Deal with it. And I'm saying if you're in the forest and you get to go outside and you get to do things and you're moving all the time, and you have to sit in the classroom all day, that's a big change.
It's a
And you
difficult.
have to sit there and listen to somebody talk and not be allowed to kind of interact with your peers or anything else. AKA, we know what that's like sitting in an MBA class compared to our foundations class.
True enough.
Yeah.
True enough.
And then you go to, and we get to talk the whole time, right? So that's a big difference. And that was just a semester. Now we're talking about years of development, which they're developing important skills. I completely get that. But that's a huge transition period, a monumental moment in time for a teenager to say move to high school or whatever the case is. That's a huge amount of changes.
Yeah, but you would agree with me, like as Megan said, this is new, right? Forest schools are new. Just started to happen in New Brunswick in 2013. So as the progress continues and more kids are into forest school, the transition period between forest schools and regular schools will be more important because more kids will have that issue. And as we keep progressing with this area of education, we'll find a way. Like the idea is to have more kids to do some research and find out what's the issue, what's a specific issue in the transition period, and work with that. Because I agree with you, it's a difficult transition period, and the research that has been done right now, it already states that the transition is hard. So let's work with that. Let's work on that.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
That was my observation.
No,
That's fair.
it's a good observation. I agree with you. But like that's where the research should be heading because that's the issue right now, the transition.
But how do we know it's heading there? How do we know that they're even looking at this?
That hopefully they're listening to us.
I just want to point out that most of the forest schools are for like if they're all day affairs, they're for kids like
Yeah.
3 to 5 years old, because like it's before they actually go to school. So that transition period, while it's maybe a little bit more difficult for them, it's happening to all 5-year-olds because all 5-year-olds have to learn how to like sit in the classroom from an unstructured, whether they were at daycare or
Fair.
whatever. They all have to learn how to do that. So maybe
Good point.
it might be a little bit different because they were used to being around a lot of people at once, but at the same time, the other 5-year-olds are in the same boat. So in the end, they're better off because they've learned all these skills and have learned how to, problem solve or whatever. So it's not just about the transitioning from like junior high to high school because I mean that's still tough on anyone, but these like all day affairs like it's for kids or young kids.
Yeah. But didn't they also say they did after school programs as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But then those kids are still in school.
Yeah.
That
would
so,
be
like,
later.
This would essentially provide them like an outlet because then they could like focus all their energy in concentrating in school and then they would have free time after school and they could do whatever they wanted and climb the highest tree or whatever they felt like they needed to do that day.
And I wonder too, in addition to like what Megan just said, is that if they do forest school, like from the ages 3 to 5 before they start going to elementary school, I wonder if it helps them actually because if they're going to be indoors most of the day, I wonder if it helps them to, at their break times, like recess or lunchtime, to actually better enjoy their time outside and to utilize that time, utilize that space, and teach them how to utilize their energy to actually, they know how to play outside at this point now, rather than not having that option of learning that process, because apparently it's a process now. But I wonder if like it actually improves their performance in school because they know how to enjoy outdoors and play outdoors with the minimal time they have.
I think it also like it kind of instills the that like independency, like a kid's opportunity to be more independent, so they're not, needing what's the word I'm looking for, needing, other forms of entertainment to satisfy their needs. So rather than having to rely on TV or their computers or cell phones or something like that, they can make their own fun, and it's forcing kids now who I think the thing that we forget a lot is the fact that when we were younger we didn't have as many distractions as and options as kids today now have. That when I was a kid growing up, like video games are just becoming a thing. Like now there's more options for kids to do, and that are made more readily available to them now. So allowing these kids to partake in these in forest schools, it teaches them to be more independent. It teaches them, how to make their own fun again, which I feel like has been lost.
Yeah, it kind of like fosters their imagination because they have to like create, like you said, create their own games and whatever, create your own fun.
And they don't need necessarily someone to put that in place for them. Like now they know how to
Yeah, but if you throw a group of kids in the woods, like they're gonna come up with some crazy ridiculous game that they could play for hours, based on like strictly their imagination.
Yeah.
If they are used to that, but if they're not, then they'll kind of just I don't know. They could be scared. They could be timid. They could be just standing there waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
So, anyone else have any thoughts on that part of the forest school, like the imagination and fostering that kind of environment?
I think it's a great idea for it. I don't think I have any other new thoughts. I think we've covered it pretty good. But I mean, I personally like the idea. I also, it was funny because when we were in colloquium, I sent an email I work for a First Nations organization, and which is also an education organization. So I had sent the idea to the ED of the organization, letting her know that this was a thing.
Right.
And this is something that First Nations could kind of take into their own hands and implement an after-school program or a community day program or a summer program or anything like that, because this is something that the forest school on its own and everything that they currently do in the mainstream can be brought into the communities, and then a cultural component can be added to it.
Right.
And that's something that I think would be well received in the communities, and that, I mean, the kids, I think, would like gain so much from that. And I don't know, I personally would like to see it within First Nations and Aboriginal communities, because I think that it could really, when you add the culture component to it, I mean, they're already trying to figure out different programs and how they can add the cultural component. So I mean, this is something that can be, I think that could be easily done.
Right. And just getting kids outside too. Like when I was a kid,
Exactly.
I remember being like locked out of the house because it was like, okay, you have to stop watching TV or you have to do whatever, and you have to go outside and play. Like you might, I don't know, I'm not sure if this is true, but you don't see that as much. You might not see that as much these days.
Yeah, no, I totally remember that. Well, it depended where I was. At my grandmother's, it was near the woods. She lived right on the edge of the woods, and we played all day outside, and it would be so much fun. But at my parents' house, we lived, I don't know, it wouldn't be suburbs, it'd be whatever is after suburbs. But, I mean, there wasn't really forests around. It was just houses and streets, and there was like a playground like 10 minutes away. So that was okay, but I always rather going out and playing in the woods, yeah.
I lived in town, and we were forced to go outside, and it was just like, don't go on the street. That was it. Do whatever you want. Just
like,
don't
well,
go
where
on the
do I
street.
go?
Yeah, if the ball goes on the street, come get us.
Yeah, my grandparents' summer home was it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and there was no power. There's still no power there, so we were kind of forced in that situation where you had to make your own fun, and it was awesome. There was so much stuff that we did growing up that like we used to like sneak into like neighbors' gardens and steal vegetables and
Oh my
eat
goodness,
groceries and stuff.
Are you doing a confession right now?
Yeah.
Is that what's going on? Shall we
Like,
call the cops?
Neighbors of Evan, please
He's
no.
apologizing.
Yeah.
They're probably not listening.
You never know.
Let's hope not. I didn't steal any vegetables or fruits or anything like that.
Okay, so we touched on the benefits that being outside and outdoor education in forest schools can have on a person's character, such as like their imagination, their confidence, all of those kind of things. They're more
Depression.
social. Sorry?
Apparently, according to one of the articles, like the forest schools help depressed kids as well.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Exactly. So there's tons of benefits that directly relate to the character. So my question to you guys is there anything else that would promote these developments of character in another way? So will they get that if they're not in the forest school, do you think? Or could they go somewhere else to get it?
I think any sort of like social education program where it forces kids to interact
With each other.
away from like screen times, and I think anything like that would foster that type of development.
I think you're right. That's huge now, is that kids are constantly, like, probably, if they're not sleeping, it's probably 100% screen time. If it's not TV, it's a game console of whatever type. I don't do that. I don't know. Or laptop. Yeah. Javier thinks I'm uncool because I don't play games. But yeah, TV, or they're gaming out, or they're on their laptop, or their cell phone. I mean, so I brought this up when we were in foundations, and I talked about how I was like a youth mentor for young girls, and it was like big brothers, big sisters. So I would take them out once in a while, and it was like phenomenal to see how kids are, not so much socially, but just things like they didn't want to do because they didn't have to do it because they had their phone as a means of texting someone. Like, to make a simple phone call, this girl who was 16 years old, she would not make a phone call to, I forget what it was, to make an appointment, I think, for like a doctor's appointment. She would not make a phone call. She was like so scared. She didn't want to do it. She made me do it. Cause it wasn't texting, cause she texts all her friends. Like, this is just something that easy things that we don't even think about, that these kids aren't learning how to do because all they have to do is text or email. Like, I don't know, it's just like things like that you don't really think about.
Right.
That is kind of crucial to being an adult.
Yeah, like social interaction,
Exactly.
developing social skills, social cues.
All these
kind of
social
things.
cues and social skills they're totally missing out on because their phones are like in their face all day, every day.
Do you think they could get that? So like those. So in the forest school, like one thing that we said was that there's a lot of risk involved, and people getting out of their comfort zone. Like, is there any other environment that would kind of put them in that without putting them in danger?
I think like any sort of like I said, any sort of like maybe daycare or something like that. Anything like that where they're interacting like that, they might not have as much exposure to developing, those type of skills, whether it be, learning how to build a fire or something like that.
The outdoor stuff.
Yeah. But I think they'd still be exposed to that type of social interaction and development that's needed.
We're actually skipping one of the most important part of kids' development: playing sports, playing team sports.
That's what I was going to get to next, but I didn't want to be everything sports.
Yeah.
I can be that guy.
But no, I was totally going to say that after Evan said his piece that.
I asked for the word.
No, you're right. But I mean, with sports, you can't play basketball with your phone in your hands. I mean, you're forced to put it down. You're forced to use different, not just verbal communication, but like other types of communication to to learn from each other, I guess, to interact with each other and get that social development. And then I tried to think really quickly if someone wasn't a sports type of person, what else they could do. But there's other recreation.
There's a lot of recreation that involves social. Like right now, well, I don't know if our listeners know, I'm not from Canada. I don't know if you can
say that every day.
So I'm from Ecuador, right? And I have back home just a little group of friends that like to play board games. So we got together every once in a while and played board games. Apparently, I don't know if it's because of the snow or like during winter we're on -40 or whatever, but there's a solid board game community here.
Well, that's what you're starting to see now, is that board game,
like making a comeback?
like board game.
Well, there's a board game cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are starting to become a thing.
Go there.
But that's just another example of how you can actually develop social skills without playing sports.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not
Nice
just about sports,
Nice one, thank you.
although I wish it were. But whatever. The thing is that there's other options.
Yeah.
So again, forest schools are good. They help to develop that kind of stuff, but it doesn't have like it's not the only option. No, it's not.
No, but you have to be careful with sports, and I wanted to kind of chime in when you guys were talking about it, but yes, you don't have a phone, yes, you don't have, stuff in your hands when you're playing the sport, but what happens in the locker room? What happens when you're doing a team dinner? What happens when you're doing other things? It's a lot different, right?
What are you getting at here?
You do get that. Like that, I will give to you. You do get it when you're, on the court or you're practicing or whatever the case is, but you have to be able to also do it in the dressing room, because what happens when you're on a team sport and you're not really getting that cohesion for your team because everybody's on their phones all the time. For us, our hockey team, we had that problem at the beginning of the year, and we had to make no phone, no iPhone or iPod or whatever, any devices in the locker room at any given time, before practices, after and before games and after. And even when we went out for team dinners, if I saw one phone out on the table, I'd grab it. Like we were really, really strict with the girls so that they had to interact with each other, because that's part of the problem now. Like if you see teams who are just, I'm there to play hockey, I'm there to be better, but it's a team sport. You have to be able to do it as a team.
That's fair. I have a question for you. What did you do for team building at the beginning of the year, or did you do anything?
We had a sleepover party at our general manager's house, and we actually, the coaching staff, we created a version of Minute to Win It for the girls, and we broke them up into different teams, and we made sure that second years were with first years, and forwards were with defense, and goalies were with the others, and they did all kinds of different tasks, and it was like a point streak or whatever, and it was a lot of fun, and there was pictures, and it was a really good time.
Okay.
It was hilarious.
The reason I ask is because I've noticed on social media and stuff, more professional teams, mostly the NHL, because that's the one that I follow the most. They started to do kind of outdoor activities as their team builders. So they'll go to Banff for some springs or something. They'll go zip lining or something like that. Something to bring them together away
when I
from
was in
all
Warner, that's what we did at the very beginning. We went to Banff for the weekend, and we went camping, and we went hiking and all that fun stuff. And it was as soon as we got there, you basically threw the stuff in the van and you were gone, because it was all about just the team and just bonding as a team. And that's why you see a lot of teams at the beginning of a year, especially for new teams, what they'll do is they'll go to a tournament, very beginning of September or whatever, and they'll go to a tournament just to do that. So it's 3 days with your team, you get to know each other, you're together. And you can do outdoor things, we used to go for walks together as a team, do that kind of stuff. But regardless, you need to find a way where devices or anything else is not in the way. You're actually able to socially kind of connect. And if the team doesn't buy into that, and if the coaches don't kind of construct it, then you might not get that in sports, right? So it's very dependent on that kind of a situation. If the team's into it and the coaches are
to be fair, that's like outdoors or that kind of activities are not the only option to create at like team cohesion and
No,
team chemistry.
definitely not. Definitely
Yeah.
not.
Um,
There's 100. Like you could do almost anything as long as
they're
everyone
together.
does it
Like a funny example, this last Friday I went to a bar, and at some point of the night, like half the soccer team of the university appeared there, and they were together. They arrived together. They left together, and it was clear that we're like drinking together and
Yeah,
having
a
fun
bonding,
together.
yeah.
And that's like
Team
even
bonding.
partying is a team bonding spirit if
Oh,
they
for
actually
sure.
are like up to it, right?
Right.
So team building, team bonding is it's a great part of why you enjoy team sports, right?
Right. Yeah.
And just in addition to that, it's not just for teams. I mean, that was a part of our MBA orientation. And I
Oh, yeah,
mean,
true.
look at our group. I mean, our group is, I mean, I don't want to brag, but we're pretty solid.
We're pretty tight.
Yeah, we're pretty tight. So, I mean, like, it doesn't just go for sports teams. I mean, you can take that with any group that you need.
To bring
Team
them together.
cohesion.
Yeah. Basically, what I wanted to bring, or what I want to bring it back to, is that there are like impacts for specific groups, I guess, in like outdoor education and being outdoors, and like how beneficial they are. So one is teams, right? In one of the articles that I sent you guys, it talked about the issues or benefiting kids with disabilities and special needs and attention problems. So if there is major benefits and if they're proven to be there, do you guys think that there should be kind of like funding to push these individuals to go there so it can help them in the long run, or if it just should be like if they want to do it and their parents know about it, they can do it?
What do you
I
mean,
think
like,
But-
So like if there's like an it will cost money to go to forest school.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a daycare like anything else, and it's probably expensive because of, you know, the risk and everything involved with it. So what if an individual with a disability who already has, you know, other things to pay for has to, or wants to go here because, you know, they've heard that it would benefit them, or the parents have heard that it will benefit their child and help them help them develop these skills that they may not develop if they just stay home or if they just send them off to school whenever they need to. So should there be like, do you think there should be like funding or a way that these kids could kind of get there so that they can experience what the benefits are?
I'm all about the funding. Give everyone money.
Yeah.
Let's all do everything.
Taxes.
Maybe there's a way. Yeah, maybe there's a way that the government could.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's funding.
We give childcare money, right? The government provides childcare money, parents. So instead of maybe just giving it to the parents to pay for after school things or pay for a babysitter or whatever, why not put it and say, hey, I'll give you the money if you go to this forest school, or I'll give you the money if you go to this program, instead of just giving it blindly to them and saying, yeah, I know you're going to need daycare at some point, here you go.
We can actually take it one step ahead and say, let's give the money to the forest school if you don't
To
charge.
sponsor kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work too.
Yeah.
Because then they could directly, you know, they would know what kids are coming in and
And that's a
if they
direct
actually needed
that's
it.
a direct delivery method instead of giving the money to the parents and,
Right.
and creating an agreement with them.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, and then it would, you know, give the support to the forest schools.
exactly.
So that was kind of my next thing, like how could we give support to the forest schools, or how could we get the government to back them
That's,
in other ways, like in addition to these kids that would need it.
I personally would like to see numbers that support the benefits of
Right.
forest school. Once you have clear that and you can actually go public with those numbers, now we have a case. And now we can talk of how to do it. Until then, it's just a speculation.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to sell government organizations that would be giving out the funding, like on the idea of funding forest schools with limited numbers and limited like results collected from it because there's so many.
Yeah, it's like every other recreation thing, right? It's like there are benefits to it, but if you can't prove it, then why
And
are
I
we
think
gonna
like
back it?
I think in a society where risk is like huge and it's with something like forest schools where safety
liability
and liability is like a big issue, I would see why like government funding organizations would be very hesitant in wanting to fund something like this.
But at the same time, what might be interesting is if they actually went out and experienced it for themselves. We're talking about survival stuff, we're talking about being out in the woods. You know, there are businesses that do that kind of, you know, what is it, the business vacation or whatever, for like a group of employees. Why not, if we're looking to get that kind of funding, maybe bringing them out and showing them what's happening, or even showing them how the kids have changed. Bring them out like a couple of times and say, here's the beginning, here's middle stages, here's the end, and have them experience that as well. It might give them some more insight into the actual, you know, what's happening, and the precautions that they're taking to do it, right? Could help with funding. That's my opinion. It's better to experience than just to, like, I get the stats, you need stats, obviously, because it's going to be a public thing,
right.
But it's better to have that experience and then be able to kind of advocate for it as well.
Yeah, but if you go there as a witness for like one day or a week, you don't see progress. You see current state. So you can cherish the activities and what's going on, but you cannot measure the progress that a kid has done. You know what I mean?
Stay for a year. Go if there's an after school program that they run. Go after school. Like, if you're going to invest in that money and you're going to bring this out to the public, and that's the way that we're suggesting that they should go, then they need to also invest the time to make sure this is what they want.
Yeah, but who's receiving the funding? The school, right?
Well,
so why would the government organization should involve their resources into waiting and see and attending these forest schools for a year instead of having the school get the numbers to support their ask for funding?
Numbers are going to come in years, but if you can start like having people who are going to advocate for it now, so then when the numbers do come out, those two together, it's the same thing as if you're running any type of program. If I have some celebrity or some high-profile person say that this was a great experience, this is blah, 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 or whatever, and I have the numbers to prove it, that's a whole different ballgame than just, yes, okay, there's evidence that, you know, these kids get positive youth development and learn these skills at this place, right? You need that kind of social involvement to elevate, you know, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay. So basically, there is a lot to go on forestry schools. They're still in their early infancy stages. Do you guys have any closing remarks on thoughts of where to go in the future, or your opinions on the forestry schools again, or anything?
I think it'd be interesting to start some sort of study to see the effects of the forest schools. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting for someone to do maybe a thesis on it or something.
If anyone's interested.
Yeah, if anyone's interested out there, maybe you could do a study on.
Anybody who's looking to do their master thesis.
Yeah.
AKA Evan.
I already have my topic picked. For any of you prospective graduate students who are thinking of attending UMP in the MASRS program.
Oh, nice pitch.
Yeah,
There's
there
your
we go.
thesis topic right there.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening. This was
I
fun.
want an acknowledgement in your thesis. I think that it's a neat way of promoting outdoor recreation, and I think it's a popular trend that you're starting to see now is the being more in tune with the environment, getting more active. What's the phrase that they say? But it's a new way of getting involved with your environment, and if we start to see now that schools start to implement this in the curriculum, teaching them very vital skills that I don't see the average kid being subjected to. And if these things continue to grow and they start to get the numbers and they start to show that these are effective programs, then I would hope that the government would see this as a way to fund a great initiative, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, surely to God, if they had the numbers and that was happening, you would hope, like, if the government didn't back this up, we have serious problems. We need to call a re-election. Let's just put it that way.
Let's dig into that.
Cynthia for Prime Minister.
Yeah. we could bring up lots
The
of stuff.
funding for coaching would go to the roof.
NCCP will disappear
Yeah.
and be recreated in something totally different.
No parents allowed.
I like that.
No, you would.
That kind of scares me.
All right, so thank you guys for listening. It's clear that there's still a lot of groundwork to be done in forestry schools, but we're here to start the conversation and hopefully get you guys talking about it as well. So thanks for sticking with us.
Peace
Bye.
out.
See ya. Hablamos.